Hi, in this lesson I'm going to talk about protons, neutrons and electrons. Well, we all know that in an atom, in the center of the atom we have the nucleus, which is consisted of protons and neutrons. Protons are abbreviated as P+, neutrons as N0, and E- is for the electrons with the negative charge. So the charge of the protons is positive, and charge of the electrons is negative, and the charge of the neutrons doesn't have a charge, so it's neutral from its name. As you can see here, we have a diagram of an atom. We have the nucleus here and the electrons. Well, why didn't I put the orbit area? Because electrons don't orbit the nucleus. Well, they're like a fly. You can think about them as a fly. They randomly buzz around that nucleus. Okay. Now, for the weight of the proton and the neutron, well, both of them are approximately 1 AMU, which is a measure that's used by scientists just to measure the mass. They use it for the measurement of mass of an element. So if we have an element that is 12 AMU, its atomic mass is 12 AMU, well, or 12.01 AMU, well, we'll know it's what? Carbon. But of course the mass doesn't identify the element. Well, what identifies the element is the atomic number. Now we'll talk about it right now. Okay, as you can see here, I have some formulas. P plus equals Z, or A minus N power 0. What are those? Well, when we're talking about protons, neutrons and electrons, we want to know how to calculate them. How to calculate the number of protons, neutrons and electrons. The first way for calculating the number of protons, well, there's two ways. One is by looking at the periodic table, and we all know in the periodic table we have numbers above them and numbers under them in the periodic table for the element. So the number above it is the atomic number, which is what? It's the number of protons and also electrons if the element is neutral. Okay, so as you can see here, we have the formula of protons, calculating number of protons. It equals to Z. What does Z mean? Well, Z is also an abbreviation for the word atomic number. So the number of protons equals the atomic number. So if we say the atomic number is 6, what is the number of protons in an element? And it's a neutral element. Well, we'll say it's simply 6 because the atomic number equals the number of protons. What about A minus N with the power on it, power 0? The charge. What does that mean? Well, A is an abbreviation for the atomic mass, which is the mass of an element. It is AMU, atomic mass unit. So the atomic mass unit minus the number of neutrons equals the number of protons. What does that mean? Well, sometimes when you're doing chemistry, like of course it's like a beginning, an introduction of chemistry, sometimes they give you the number of neutrons, but they don't give you the atomic number or the atomic number, but they give you what? The atomic mass. So when they give you atomic mass and the number of neutrons, well, they simply gave you the answer, but you need to use that formula A minus N0. What does that translate to? It means the atomic mass minus the number of neutrons equals the number of protons. But why is it like that? Because the number, that's a big rule, it's like reversed. Why? Because P plus N0 equals A. So we use that formula as an algebraic formula. So what is happening is that we know the A and we know the N, but we don't know this. So simply we just rearrange everything, and then we're going to have this formula to calculate what? The number of P plus. Okay, so that's for the P plus. Now, or for the protons. Now let's go for the neutrons. Okay, for the neutrons, you want to calculate them. Simply, you write A minus Z. What does that mean? It means the atomic mass minus the atomic number. So it's the mass subtracted by the number of protons. Okay, now don't get scared from the symbols and everything, because it is really actually easy. Because simply A, as you said, it's the mass, just write the mass minus the number of protons, and it equals the number of neutrons. Because as you said, when you add protons and neutrons equals what? The atomic mass, correct. Well, let's go for the electrons now. To calculate the number of electrons, this is a must rule. You should remember that it must be a neutral element. What does that mean? It means if you want to calculate an element that is neutral, you can use only this formula if it's neutral. What does that mean? It means that the element shouldn't have a charge, neither it is cation or anion. It should be neutral. Okay, so the formula is E minus equals Z. Yes, equals Z. We said that Z is the atomic number, but it's used for getting the number of protons. Well, also you can use it for to get the number of electrons. Why? Because when we say the element is neutral, that means that it doesn't have a charge. So the number of protons and electrons should be equal, so that there's no charge. Okay, so if the atomic number is 6, then the number of electrons is 6 and the number of protons is 6. Now let's take an exception. Let's say an element is an ion. It's maybe positive or negative, cation or anion. Well, how to calculate the number of electrons? It's simple. Let's say we have lithium with a charge of plus, and lithium, which is neutral, a cation and a normal element it's not an ion. How can we calculate the number of electrons? Well, first thing, of course, it's giving the atomic number. It's 3. That's an easy and simple way to calculate the number of electrons. Simply what do you do is that, let's start first thing with the neutral one. You write 3 plus, so here we have 3 plus, and we write 3 minus. So that equals to 0, no charge. Now we go here. We write 3 plus, and it's a cation, so it's 3 plus. What about the number of electrons? Simply what do you do? Because it's written plus, it means 1 plus, the charge is 1 plus. You just write 2 electrons. Why? Because let's say that we're adding 1 plus to that 3e minus. When you add to it, it will be 2e minus. So you write here 2e minus. You add them, the total charge will be plus 1. So that means we have 2 electrons in lithium. Another example. I think it's a little bit complicated, but let's try another one. And if you try to solve it by yourself, I think you will know how to solve it. And it's not hard at all. Okay. Another example is sodium, Na. Atomic number is 11, charge plus, and Na neutral. Let's solve first thing. What is the let's solve the neutral element or the neutral atom. Well, sodium has the atomic number of 11. So how many protons? Correct, 11 protons. And how many electrons? 11 electrons. So in total, they should equal to 0, because when you add positive to a negative and they're the same, they neutralize each other. So that's an easy way to just think about how to solve it. You should always, when it's neutral, get the number of 0, and when it's an ion, you should get the ion charge. So here the ion charge is plus 1. How can we get plus 1 if we have 11 protons? So what can we add to that 11 protons to get a plus 1 charge? You're right, 10 electrons. Why? Well, if we say 11 protons and 11 electrons, it won't equal to plus 1. And if we say 11 protons and 12 electrons, it will equal to minus 1. So the sum won't equal to plus 1, it will equal to minus 1. So how can we solve that? Simply, we say that it has 11 protons and 10 electrons. Always subtract that number plus 1 from the number of electrons, and it will equal to 10 minus. So the charge will be plus 1. Okay. I'll summarize it in just a second, because there's another rule. Now let's take another rule, which is another element. Chlorine, Cl, the atomic number is 17. Let's say we have an anion and the neutral atom of chlorine. Let's just calculate the number of protons and electrons. Well, for chlorine here, it has an atomic number of 17, and we know that P plus equals Z. So the atomic number 17, the number of protons 17. What about the number of electrons? We said it should equal to 0. And also, we said that there's a rule that says that if the element is neutral, or the atom is neutral, then to calculate the number of electrons, it's E minus equals 0. So we'll say 17 electrons. That's it, easy. If we add them to each other, equals 0. That's the charge. Now let's go for the chlorine. It's not hard at all, believe me. Same thing, atomic number, so the number of protons won't change. 17 plus. What about the electrons? Let's consider it as a neutral element. Let's say it's 17 electrons. We consider it as a neutral element. So we say that it has 17 electrons. But then we see that sign, the minus sign. So what do? We simply add to it. Just put a sign, just put here plus 1 minus. What will this equal to? 18 E minus. So we have 18 electrons. You get it? It's easy. So what is the number of electrons here? It's 18 minus. And the net charge will be minus 1. So the charge will be minus 1. Okay, so this is how we do it. You didn't understand it? Here's the recap, just so you can understand how to do it. We said that we have an element. Let's say it's lithium again. Okay, we have lithium. And it has the atomic number of 3. And the charge, let's say it's a cation. It had reacted and it's a cation. It has a plus 1 charge. And then we have another lithium atom, but it's a neutral one. How can we calculate the charge or the recap so you can understand it in a better way? Always look, if it's a neutral element or a neutral atom, just simply use the rule P plus equals Z. So the number of the atomic number is 3, so the number of protons is 3 plus or 3 P plus. And to neutralize that, we should have, you're right, 3 E minus. So you should have 3 protons and 3 electrons, and this will equal to 0. We can use also the rule that E minus equals Z only if the element is neutral. Okay, you see that's a simple way to just calculate the atom when it's neutral, the number of electrons and proton, the number of electrons when it's neutral. What about if it's an ion? That is an easy way, because it's simply math. We can see the sign is plus, yeah? So what do? The number of protons, we write 3 P plus. That's for sure. And when the element or when the atom is neutral, it has 3 minus. 3 E minus. But then we notice that there's a plus 1. So what do? We write plus 1. What happens when you add a positive to a negative? You're right. We're going to add it, and it will be considered as almost subtracting. By what? Adding positive to negative, you're just simply just like subtracting. It will equal to 2. But the charge will stay. If the negative is greater than the positive, then the negative will win. So what will happen is that when we add the charge of lithium here, we'll remove one digit, and it will be 2. It will be minus 2. So how many electrons? It's 2 electrons. And it's easy because we know that if it's plus, then it lost an electron, because lithium has 3 protons and 3 electrons. When you have 3 electrons and 3 protons, and then you suddenly get a positive charge, of course you don't lose protons, you lose electrons or gain electrons. So you lost an electron, you're left with 2 electrons. That's another way if you have small numbers. and then you can see that you have 2 electrons and 3 protons. So this is the simple way. Just look at the charge. If it's positive, you add to the negative, and we add negative and positive. Of course, if the positive is less than the negative will win and the sign will stay, but the number will decrease. Okay, so that's for positive. It is easy and simple way. What about the negative? It is also simple. Let's take chlorine again. It is an ion and a neutral one. To calculate for the neutral one, what do you say? 17 protons because it's neutral, and 17 electrons, and they will equal 0. What about the negative? Well, for the negative, it will simply be like this. What do we have? 17 protons, and to neutralize that, it will be 17 electrons. But it's not neutral, it has a negative charge. So what happens is that we write plus, or just write -1. Plus, -1. What happens when you add negative and negative? Well, when you add negative and negative, the sign will still be negative, so it will equal to negative. Then you add the numbers, it will be -18. So the number of electrons is simply -18. So that's the number of electrons in chlorine. So that's the simple way of calculating what? Just calculating the number of protons and electrons. Now for the number of neutrons, it is really simple. The number of neutrons, you just take the atomic mass and subtract by the atomic number. Let's take an example. Carbon. Okay, so the carbon, it has the charge, it has the mass of 12.01. Just let's say 12, and the atomic number of 6. So what happens is that we know that the number of protons equals 6, and the number of electrons is 6 because it's neutral. But what about the number of neutrons? How can we calculate that? Easy. We take 12 subtracted by 6 equals 6. So the number of neutrons equals 6. That's the way. Okay. Now we solved the problem of how to get the number of protons, neutrons, electrons. But let's go back for a little bit for protons. We said that there's 2 ways. The one that P plus equals Z, and there's another way which we didn't use, which is what? A minus N, which is a neutron. So let's use that way. What does that mean? Let's take again carbon. What do we do here is that, for example, they didn't give us the atomic number, they just gave us like this, the atomic mass, and they told us that the neutron number here is 6. So that's, for example, equation, not like just a picture. They told you an equation, or for example a problem solving. If you have an element that has the atomic mass of 12 and the number of neutrons 6, how many protons does it have? Well, what do? Just take 12, subtract by 6 again, and you get the number of protons. So that's it. Okay, we calculated the number of protons, electrons, and neutrons. Now I'll just put in the screen right now easy question that you can solve by yourself and check your answers in just a second right now. Okay, as you can see here, we have the questions. What's written in black color is the given, and those empty boxes, you should answer them by yourself. Let me help you. Well, some of the questions you need to use the periodic table, so you can open on the laptop or in your book, you can look up for the periodic table and check for the questions that you must have the periodic table to answer. So let me help you with the first question so you can understand how to solve it. As you can see, the symbol of the element is Fe, then it is iron. So the chemical symbol is Fe, so it's iron. Z, as you said, is the atomic number. So of course I need the periodic table to look at it and know the atomic number. Solve that. Or else, if you memorize the periodic table, you'll know it by yourself, which is simply iron's atomic number is 26. Okay, so iron is a 26th. And then they tell you the atomic mass is 56. Okay, keep this aside, and this information I'm going to use it right now. They tell you what is the number of protons and what is the number of electrons. They didn't tell you that the element is an ion, so it's a neutral. So it's a neutral element. So simply, the number of protons equals what? Equals the number of the atomic number. So it's 26. Let me write in another color. And for the electrons, because it's also neutral, we use the same idea, equals 26, because the electrons, if it's a neutral element, it will equal the atomic number. Neutrons, simply take the atomic mass and subtract it from what? From the atomic number. When you subtract that, it will equal to 30. So this is for the this is me just helping you for the idea of how to solve it. Now try to solve it by yourself. I'll give you a couple of seconds, couple of minutes, couple of hours. Try your best and solve it. And you can pause it, and I'll give you the answers here. Okay, for the second question, you solved it? Great. Here's the answers. Check your answers. If you didn't solve it correct, I'll help you. Okay, they tell you the atomic number is 60, and the element is neutral. So the atomic number equals the number of protons and electrons. So 60 here, then 60 in the protons and 60 in the electrons. What about the number of neutrons? Simply subtract 144 from 60 equals 84. Next question, try to solve it by yourself. Ready? Go. Okay, you solved the third question? Great. How to help you, or how can I help you? Well, if you didn't answer correctly, simply to answer the number of the atomic number, think about it in a reverse way. We said that the number of protons, to calculate it, we need to know the atomic number. So if the atomic number is 26, then the number of protons is 26. Well, here they didn't give us the atomic number, but they gave us the protons number. So we reverse the idea. So if we have 45 protons, then we should have the atomic number should be 45, because always the atomic number is the identity of the element. Okay. So always, why is it considered as the idea of the element? Because the number of protons decides what element are we dealing with. Because if we have one proton, then it's hydrogen. But if we have two protons, then we're not dealing with hydrogen, we're dealing with helium. So the proton is just simply the ID card of the element, and you cannot, if you change the number of protons, then you change the element. Okay, so just remember, number of protons equals the atomic number, and the atomic number equals the number of protons. Now, of course, because the element is neutral, we're going to have also 45 electrons to neutralize it. 45 positive things, 45 negative things. What about the number of neutrons? Simple. We said 102 minus the atomic mass minus the atomic number equals the number of neutrons. Okay, this is not the last question. I have two more extra questions. If you want, you can solve them, or if you don't want, you can not solve them. Okay, so try to solve that one, which is the first question, and the second question is coming right now. 3, 2, 1, pause. Okay, that's an easy one, because simply, if the atomic mass is 59 and the number of neutrons is 31 and the element is neutral, what do we do if you answer it in a wrong way? Simply, as you said, we can use this formula: A minus n0, which is the neutron, equals the number of protons. So the element is neutral, so the number of protons, okay, will of course stay constant because it's the identity of the element. So the number of electrons will stay constant. The number of electrons will equal the number of protons, because what? It's a neutral element. Okay, so 59 minus 31 equals 28, and 28 protons is also the number of what? The atomic number. So the atomic number equals 28, number of protons 28. Neutral element, then number of protons should equal the number of electrons. 28 also is for the number of electrons. Last question, I'm going to put it in just a second. In 3, 2, 1, I'm placing it right now. Okay, here we go. Last question. Symbol Al, which is aluminium. Now try to solve it by yourself. You can pause the video and then check your answers. Okay, let's go for the answers right now. For the answers, well, you need the periodic table to just solve it. You can go look up the element on the periodic table and just take the characteristics of the element. Okay, This element is aluminium. So if we look up at the periodic table, the atomic number of aluminium is 13. So number of protons, because it's neutral, 13, and the number of electrons is also 13. But now we need to subtract 27 from 13. So what will that equal to? Well, when you subtract 27 from 13, it will equal, of course, 14. So simply, this is about our lesson for today, calculation of protons, neutrons, and electrons. So this is all about our lesson for today, and I hope it is useful. And don't forget to tell your friends and relatives and everyone you know about this channel so it can grow and other people can learn about chemistry. So this is all about our lesson for today, and I hope it is useful.